I should make this video as I'm coming to the end of this journey on this rather lengthy project. It's been a year and 8 months since I started this axe. I started off with that raw nodular flint, and I'll be around 180 hours of work put into this one stone over that year and 8 months, and it's had its ups and downs, but overall I'm extremely pleased that I've decided to take this on. It's been very educational for myself and hopefully for some other people as well, and what I've ended up with I think is something to be pretty proud of. I thought I'd just do this video here as I'm very nearly finished with this axe now, so I thought I should really just do a close-up of the setup of how I'm finishing the cutting edge on it, and to prove also that this is how I've achieved the shine on this axe. Of everything from start to finish on this axe has been purely using natural materials that I've picked up and found around the farm here in Suffolk in England, and I haven't cut any corners at all. There's been no use of modern materials apart from the old plastic bottle for holding water, but otherwise the actual grindstone, the wooden base, the media I've used for grinding, as in the sand predominantly, that's all obviously natural material. And this final gloss finish I'm getting here is, let me just get the camera off here, that is purely extremely fine sand. It started off a lot coarser. It was a sand that I collected here on the farm from one of the areas that has got a lot of flint and sand quite close to the surface. I could just go and collect what I wanted in the way of the sand, and as I used it for grinding on the grindstone over there, the main grindstone, it got ground down quite a lot finer just by running the axe over it, using it as a grinding media itself. But then just to get it even finer, I've been using this flint, well, I suppose grinder, pounder. I had used it as a hammerstone as well, just to run over the sand and get it even finer. And that's what we've ended up with here to finish off the axe. I mean, I'm extremely pleased with the gloss finish it's managed to achieve on there. And the camera really struggles to focus on it now because it's just so shiny. It wants to try and focus on the reflections and not the axe itself, so I quite often have to stick my thumb or finger there so it's something for it to focus on. It's quite close, but you can see there how shiny that edge is, and it is just purely this really fine sand and water. So yeah, I thought I'd just show that to demonstrate that finish is completely natural. It can be achieved using no more than what the Neolithic people would have had at their disposal as well. I just wanted to make a video to talk through the journey I've been on to make this axe here. It's been 180 hours of grinding and polishing. That's 180 hours to get to the finished piece here now. 97 hours for the initial coarse grind to get rid of all the napping flake scars, and a further 83 hours to get the shiny polished finish on the axe. Plus 14 and a quarter hours to peck the grindstone here using quartzite cobbles and flint nodules. So it's been quite a dedication. It's been a year and 8 months in the making from start to finish. So it's not been a full-time job. I haven't done it 180 hours in one go. It has been quite a lengthy process. And the main sort of point of me wanting to do this was just to, I guess, to experiment and then also highlight how people may have done it in the Neolithic times, sort of 5,000 years ago in the UK, how they may well have made these polished axes, which can be found, because a lot of people know how to nap, but it's a little bit of a sort of an unknown in a way how they ended up with these such beautifully polished axes, how it could be done using only natural materials, and that is what I've achieved there in from the point of view that I've only used materials that I've picked up on the farm, or on different farms here in Suffolk in the UK. So initially started off with the raw flint nodule, which I picked up on a local farm. That's a lovely bit of Suffolk Breckland flint. It had about it's probably 3 centimetre thick layer of cortex around the outside. So once I'd napped that away, I could see there's some gorgeous black flint inside. So I then napped that down using, started off with quartzite hard hammers, quartzite cobble hard hammers, which quartzite cobbles I can just pick up in the fields around here. They've been deposited, I guess, by the glaciers in the past. So they're laying around. Then I used red deer antler soft hammers to then thin the axe down and sort of refine it, which again, we have red deer wild around this area, so that wasn't an issue. And then the grindstone itself was one that I found on the farm that actually that had been pulled up by a cultivator in one of the fields. That came up in lots of big sort of pieces, so it's just under the surface, and that was pulled up by the cultivator. So I then took the initial sort of stone here and using again quartzite cobbles or flint nodules, which again so you can be found in the fields here. I pecked that down, say 14 and a quarter hours to peck that down to where I wanted to sort of start, and then the rest of the grindstone took shape just by the grinding of the axe. As the axe got ground down, so did the stone itself, so that deepened the channel in the middle, which is quite ridged from sort of working the axe sort of different ways, and you know, a hard grind sort of really putting the pressure on that cut quite a channel down the middle. So I tried to then even it up a bit by working the grindstone in different sort of ways, different places, using the sides of it. And then the same with the groove. Initially that started off just being quite a shallow groove, but as I used that mainly to sort of initially blunten the sides of the napped axe, but then at a later stage could also be used to form sort of some elliptical shape a bit. That's just got a deeper sort of groove channel there as well. Sometimes I used the grindstone just with water on it, but then it evolved that I needed to use a grinding media on there as well. So I went and sourced sand on the farm as well. We've got areas where there is just sand and flint and a chalk as well. Just on the surface, so you just go and collect the sand there. So start off with a very, very coarse sand in there to do the sort of the basic shaping of the axe to reduce the napping scars, and then went to a finer sand to then obviously refine the finish further. And then once sort of I'd done the initial, I think it was the initial sort of 97 hours on here to get rid of the napping scars. There are a lot of deep grinding scratches sort of and grooves all over the axe. So I realised that once I'd sort of gone as far as I could with the fine sand on this grindstone, that the stone itself is pushing up more scratches sort of into the axe. So I just wasn't going to sort of get a better finish on the grindstones. So then I went over to using some pine tree, softwood pine, which again I just sourced on the farm. So using that with well, ultimately with fine sand in there, the softwood itself was a lot more forgiving, but would hold a little bit of bite in the sand, so the axe itself would gradually sort of polish out the scratches without the harshness of the grindstone pushing those granules or grains of sand back up into the axe and making further scratches in it. But I mean, the polish itself was, I think, the most tedious part of the whole process, because I generally had stages where it was getting a really nice finish, then there'd just be like a coarse piece of sand, whether it came off my clothing, my skiing. I mean, working on the farm, so you get quite grubby. Would evidently get onto the pine tree sort of base, and just one more pass of the axe, and then that score a big groove up the axe, and there'd be another 10 hours work to get that one scratch out, which I just put in there. So but it became quite an obsession to get it as good as I possibly could, and I think the worst part was that I was literally 2 minutes from finishing. I just was doing the final sort of little polish there, and was practically smiling as I was getting there, and then same thing happened. I felt and heard a sort of it's a horrible sort of, you feel a little bit of a bite in the axe, and heard this horrible sort of grating sound, and turned it over, and then there'd been a tiny little bit of grit, whether it was a bit of dirt or sand, and that had scored the axe. So that was about another 10 hours to remove that. So I'm pleased though where it's at now. I mean, there's some, well, there's still, when you get it in the light, there's still the odd hint of some of the little sort of grinding scratches sort of running linear sort of down the axe, especially sort of in the high areas around the cutting edge. But I'm happy with that. They're smooth though, but then they're hardly noticeable, and that kind of tells a little bit the story of the axe. There's nothing too harsh there. And then with the flint itself being, of course, a natural material, there are imperfections in the axe. There's the sort of the natural, I guess they're fossil inclusions in the axe, which have made it all sort of cloudy, a bit like the Milky Way, a bit like galaxies in there, which I love, because that's just sort of unique to this stone. And then there are some little sort of almost like pinprick sort of holes in the axe as well, which again are just imperfections within the flint, which is just natural. And you'll never get rid of all of those, because as you get rid of one, you'll uncover another that's a little bit deeper in the axe. So I just sort of love where it's got to now. I'm really pleased with it, and enough's enough. 180 hours was quite sufficient. I certainly won't be taking on another one for a long time. I mean, I expect I will do another one in the future, but life's too busy to take on another one now. I've kind of proved how to myself sort of, and proved how it can be done, and yeah, you can imagine sort of 5,000 years ago, Neolithic people could have done it this way. I'm not saying they definitely did do it this way, but as I've achieved it using only raw materials that I've found locally, then they evidently could have done the same. I don't anticipate they'd have gone to the same effort of polishing the axe, but I think again it would depend on what their end goal was with the axe. I mean, some of these polished axes were evidently purely sort of workhorses. A polished axe will far outlast a flaked or a napped or flaked axe in use. They're far stronger. The shock waves, the impact on the wood or on the tree, they dissipate throughout the axe far better just moving over the smooth surface, and that way it doesn't sort of pocket and cause a fracture in the axe. Whereas when you've got a flaked axe, it's got all the ridges and the facets, that the shock wave can just build up in one sort of area on an impact, and then cause a fracture, cause a failure in the axe, and that's when they broke. So these would last far longer, and also you could get a lot sharper and stronger cutting edge on them as well, so they'd be a lot more efficient for cutting potentially. So there are practical reasons for grinding the axes, but also evidently some of them were purely, must have been prestige items, whether it be classed as grave goods or gifts or status symbols, or maybe even had quite a sort of a value to them that could be traded for something else, because some of them are so refined, similar to this one, but even more so, sort of being longer and thinner, so a lot weaker for actual practical use, but just almost showing off what could be done. So, and there's no reason why people sort of say 5,000 years ago in the Neolithic didn't appreciate things that look nice as well. Of course they did, art and what have you. There's sort of, it's not a modern concept that you have to appreciate the way something looks, or that's evident throughout history. I mean, going back to the lower Paleolithic, a million plus years ago, that hand axes made perfectly symmetrical. I mean, they didn't have to, but they did, because I guess there was an aesthetic quality, or again demonstrating what could be done, sort of almost showing off. Who knows? But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this has ended up. I think I probably will haft it in a wooden handle, because I've got a nice piece of hopefully a nice piece of wood lined up for doing it. So I would like to do that, just to sort of finish it off as how it could well have looked complete. But I'll tackle that project when I decide to go there. What have I sort of found along the way? Well, I found that chalk really didn't work as a grinding media. I thought that would be quite good, sort of for reducing the scratches in the axe, but it didn't. I just found it was adding sort of more and more scratches, more of a matte finish, exactly the same with charcoal. I mean, charcoal was, I think, the biggest surprise in the lack of good that it did. I really thought that charcoal would leave a lovely gloss polished finish on this axe, and it just didn't. It just made it more and more matte and scratchy. And I tried the charcoal wet, I tried it dry, and I pounded it down into a real fine powder, but no, it just wasn't going to work. And I spent sort of quite a few hours on that, and it just wasn't going to happen. So overall, the sand, different grades of sand. I mean, ultimately the final sand that I used was sand from the earlier grind that had got ground down a lot finer and smoother, sort of by the grinding of the axe. So the actual sort of almost like paste that's formed gets ground down finer and finer. So I saved some of that and then used that later on as a real fine grinding media. You've just got to be careful, because you have to be careful to pick out any little pieces that are a bit coarse, so you just sort of feel it in your hands. So that does take time, and evidently that did cause problems as well, in some of those pieces being missed, or some coming from somewhere else that got into the axe and caused additional scratches. So yeah, certainly charcoal and chalk, I wouldn't bother with going down that route again. I think all round, I mean, it's hard physical sort of work. It's the initial stages. I mean, you push as hard as you can to try and speed up the grinding process, and that worked well. But then again, later on, the polishing, it's just getting the right amount of pressure. Too much pressure and you start to put more scratches in the axe. Not enough pressure and you'll just spend hours and not getting anywhere, not looking any different. And also a big thing that I learned was the amount of water, sort of how moist the grindstone or the pine base or the grinding media is makes a big difference. Too dry, or if you use it dry or too dry, and it will well, in the earlier stages, it actually grinds the sand down far too quickly. Just a few passes of the axe, and you've totally powdered the sand, because it's just crushed under the force of the axe. But in the later stages, if it was dry, then it'd also cause too many scratches in the axe. It was just too harsh. There wasn't, I guess, enough sort of slip between the particles, or between the base and the axe, and the media in between. There wasn't enough I guess almost lubricant of the water to make it sort of pass over itself. It was just biting in and causing additional scratches. And also something that was quite interesting to notice through sort of grinding the axe was that if using the media dry or the grindstone dry, that really would heat up the axe, which, I mean, you could actually sort of almost smell the heat sort of coming off the axe and of course feel it. And as soon as I picked the axe up out, that was on the grinding side, that was a job to sort of touch it, that was that hot. And that was something I was cautious of, because not knowing quite how much heat the stone could take before potentially there could be a fracture or failure form. And throughout that 180 hours, I was always thinking, oh, what if that now cracks or something. Luckily it didn't happen. But also the heat of the grind, if not using enough water, would actually make additional lots of little sort of pinprick sort of holes in the surface of the axe, real fine, almost like orange peel, that when sort of after that sort of hot grinder then look at it, you could see there was lots and lots of little dimples in the axe. And I think that was, whether that was moisture that had been absorbed into the surface of the axe, as that expanded, that just popped out little, I suppose almost like little pot lid thermal fractures in the surface of the flint that evidently was ruining the surface of the axe. So that's something to be careful of, certainly the later stages where I was trying to refine that finish and get it as smooth as possible. Just trying to think there's sort of anything else to mention here now. I mean, I may well make another video to come back to sort of certain aspects that I haven't thought to mention here, but I think that covers sort of the majority of the process. And yeah, I mean, I hope it's been educational for people. And it's one of those things where I know there's plenty of people that have ground axes or sell sort of ground axes, modern replicas, but I mean a lot of people do grind them using sort of modern materials and modern machines as well, which I'm not being negative about that. I can't blame them for it, because this is such a dedication of time and effort to do it authentically like this. And to be honest, if somebody wants to buy a polished axe, to buy one for say £600 that's been machine ground, well, that's successful for some people, whereas something like this, hand ground with 180 hours, I mean, you know, it would be worth thousands. I mean, I'm obviously not going to sell it, but that's where it'd be at, because of purely the time that's gone into it. And of course, for people running a business like professional knappers or professional people sort of into lithics or prehistoric ways, they can't really dedicate this amount of time to the sale of one axe when they've got a livelihood to make and a business to run. So so I say there's nothing against that. It's just I think all round that from sort of start to finish, from sourcing the materials to knapping, grinding, polishing, and everything in between, I'm not aware of many other people that have done that with a flint axe, certainly in the UK anyway. So I'm proud to sort of ended up with what I have done here. That's been a good journey to take on, and I think, all being well, this axe will go to my grave with me, because I think I'll make quite a nice grave piece, that's for sure. So anyway, any questions, do ask them sort of on YouTube or Facebook or wherever I post this video. It'll certainly go on YouTube anyway, and I'll try and help out wherever I can. So thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the journey. Something I thought I should add to that video is my thoughts on the length of time it took to make this axe, and something that became very apparent quite early on was that a big effect on the amount of time it takes to grind and polish an axe is how well it's been knapped to start with. And I thought that I'd napped this axe quite well. I was very pleased with sort of how it looked in its flaked state, and I mean, overall I thought it looked quite symmetrical. But once you start grinding, it really does highlight any imperfections in your napping, and any slightly deeper flake scars could easily add 20, 30 plus hours onto the grind if they're deeper than all the others. I found out particularly that if there's high spots or ridges on the axe, they're quite quick to start to grind down, because of course they're quite a small surface area on the axe, so you very quickly reduce those down in size or in height. Whereas if you've got a facet, a deep area somewhere where a flake's travelled a bit deeper, then because you're trying to grind so much material away from around that facet, that takes far longer to remove. So I feel in the future, if I did do another one, it'd be far better to leave a few more high spots than it would to try and get it sort of looking better, sort of in a flake state, but actually cause more problems by getting deeper flake scars. I feel from having made this axe that if you napped the perfect axe, made it perfectly symmetrical, perfectly elliptical, no real deep flake scars anywhere, just ideal all round, that you could probably grind it in, I would think maybe 60 hours. I think around the 60-hour stage I got rid of a lot of the flake scars. It was just some of the deeper ones that took a lot longer to remove. Also, this axe highlighted that the symmetry wasn't quite there. There was a bit of a dip in the middle of the axe. It was slightly sort of bananaed, and of course that meant grinding down both the butt of the axe and the head of the axe to reduce those ends down to flatten out that area in the middle there. So that certainly added on a lot more time to the grind, which would have been nice if I'd been able to avoid that. Overall, say the skill of the napping has a massive effect on the grind time for the axe, and going forward I would only attempt, I think, to grind a perfectly napped axe, or one that as close as perfect. And I mean, something else was the symmetry, because of, say, you're grinding one side quite a lot to try and reduce like a flake scar in the middle of the axe. Of course, that's dropping this center line here, which then messes up the symmetry. So you have to then do the same to the other side to mirror that, and the same with the cutting edge. Because I had to grind quite a lot on one face to reduce some flake scars, that actually moved the cutting edge over to one side of the axe, which of course I couldn't leave like that, so that meant then I had to do a lot more grinding to centralize the cutting edge again, and was something that would have been nice to have avoided. It's one of those things that as you're grinding it, trying to achieve perfection, you deal with one problem and just cause another one. So yeah, it's a learning curve, but it's all part of the journey there. So I just thought I'd add that on, that I think that, say, perfectly napped axe, probably 60 hours to get to a fully ground finish. When it's not quite perfect, or quite a long way from perfect, then 97 hours, and then the polish on top of that. So so yeah, quite a commitment either way, but I think it highlights how long it may have taken in the Neolithic, or when people say, oh, how long would it take to make one of those ground and polished axes? Well, I would say 60 hours plus, but all round, I mean, 100 hours is not an unfair sort of estimate, I don't think. I mean, I predicted that it would take me about 100 hours to make this axe, which I came in 3 hours under that for the initial grind, but then of course the polish took far longer than I anticipated. So so yeah, I mean, 100 hours wasn't really that far out if you're not planning on getting the real gloss polish finish. So anyway, thought I'd add that on, and thanks for watching.